Hi, everybody, and welcome to the very first Revit YouTube live stream. We couldn't be happier that our first live stream on YouTube is featuring our very own Revit US Women's Adventure team. My name is Tracy. I'm with Revit USA. I'm a senior brand manager. And we began the team in the US in 2017 as a way to really spotlight the achievements of women in the adventure community. It started with 4 women that first year. We've changed the team up every year. We've had an incredible number of applicants year after year. And we now have 5 women on the team who are going to join us tonight. Since 2017, our women have featured in an amazing way across the industry. They've been on the IMS tour, they've traveled the world, they've been on the cover of magazines, they've worked with OEM and so much more. And as a way to start off our evening, we're going to show you just a little bit of what they were up to last September.
But I have a really hard time voicing what it gives me. You're always dealing with an element of fear, and every day you get to conquer that fear. It's scary, kind of, and challenging, but also like part of the draw of it, you know? To me, that's an adventure.
We're heading back to Lillooet. We're outside of Lillooet.
None of us have ridden up here, so we're really getting to experience the terrain, the bikes, the weather, the people, all of it together at one time. Oh my gosh, we're all here in Canada. I've been wanting to get up to Canada for a long time, so this is really awesome. This is the first time that we've had the entire team together. I couldn't really think of a better place to get together and ride.
I'm from Indiana, so we don't have mountains like this. We don't have mountains at all.
The lakes are bigger and bluer and the mountains are bigger, and it is magnificent.
Our purpose here is to share our story and be able to help support everybody at any step of the way. And when you share that journey, it's something that you hold on to forever.
So at breakfast Saturday morning, we met Dave. We had a connection about our triumphs and stuff, and we got talking, and we went up in his helicopter, and that was completely unexpected, and we had such a good time. It was amazing.
Something about the motorcycle community is you meet rad people everywhere.
I don't know how to sum up the camaraderie of getting to ride with people that are as passionate as I am about motorcycles and about each other and taking care of each other. It just feels such a connection to people that I got to meet for the first time.
I wouldn't be who I am if I didn't have off-road riding. If I didn't have these people that I ride with, these enormous motorcycles, I wouldn't be who I am.
And with that, I'd like to introduce our guest interviewer for tonight. She was a former Revit Women's team member. Her name is Louise Coleen Powers. She is an avid ADV motorcyclist who has traveled from Alaska to South America by motorcycle, who's very active in the ADV community and is especially passionate about encouraging other women to learn to ride. Louise left the team to pursue some opportunities with BMW and has had a recent, especially exciting trip. And Louise, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Tracy. I'm so excited to be here and hanging out with these amazing women. Like Tracy said, I'm a former Revit Women's ADV team member the first 2 years, 2017 and 2018, and 2019 and 2020, I left and I've been doing some other things. I've had the really good fortune to ride with all of these women at some point or another, and I'm really looking forward to bringing them to you. Since I've left the Revit Women's team, I have gone off, I've I do some motorcycle instruction. I do lots of riding, especially all around the Western United States. And I have been doing some work with BMW, particularly the BMW brand ambassador for GS. And so I get to do some dealer events and some exciting things. But the really exciting thing I got to do most recently was I attended the GS Trophy in New Zealand right before we all sort of had to come back and hunker down for a while. And I got to go as a journalist for one of the women's international teams. So I got to ride with these women and support them and pick up bikes during challenges and had a really great time. So I'm really looking forward to sharing more of women riding with you. And I would like to introduce you to the 5 women of the REV'IT Women's ADV team. And we're going to get to know each of them. So ladies, we'd love to see you. And we are going to get to know each one of these women a little bit. I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves. They're going to tell you a little bit about themselves. They're going to tell you who they are, where they're from, what they ride. And I want to know what you guys ride near your home. And I want to know what your most recent ride was. So let's start with Amelia.
Hey guys, Amelia, you guys might know me as Millie. I am located in New Jersey. I ride currently a Husaberg 390, although I'm on to bigger and better things in the near term. The last thing I rode was a Greenbrier Enduro, which was my first foray into enduro riding. I must have cried in my helmet twice, maybe 3 times. Ended up in 3rd place, really proud of that.
Nice.
And I think East Coast, you know, we've got riding all up and down the East Coast. And I've been as far as Colorado and Moab with my bike. We trailer out there.
That is awesome. Thanks so much, Amelia. Erika, where are you? Let's hear from you.
Yeah, hi guys. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. So I am from Tucson, Arizona, and I have been riding a BMW G650 GS. I recently moved out to New York City last July, so I've been out here without my bike for now, but interested in looking to get a new bike. My most recent ride was actually this past weekend. I rode passenger on my husband's F800, so that's a new thing for me. But yeah,
all right, that sounds awesome. And I can only imagine you're missing your bike while being in New York, but hopefully we'll get you back to it soon and riding again. Let's see, our next person up, how about Jenna?
Hey guys, I'm Jenna. I'm from Indiana. I currently ride a 2019 KTM 1090. That's a new bike for me after our trip to BC last September. I fell in love with that bike, so came home, traded my Tiger for one, loving it. I took it out to Texas back in January, did some riding in Big Bend National Park. So that was my most recent trip. Had a really good time, got to know the bike a little bit better. Looking forward to the next one.
That is awesome. It sounds good. All right, Kris Fant, can we hear from you?
You bet. I'm in Oregon and I ride a KTM 690 Enduro. My most recent ride, well, I like to ride anywhere. But my most recent ride before we all got quarantined was we were supposed to go on the California BDR and they closed California. So we basically got on the highway and rode to the Nevada border and then did some off-roading and then they closed Oregon. So we came home.
All right, well, way to get in a few miles before everything shut down. Well done. Katelyn, hello, introduce yourself.
Hi guys, I'm Katelyn. I'm from Colorado and I ride a BMW 650 GS and I also, right before quarantine, just acquired a Honda 250, which I am super stoked about. So lots of dirt, single track in my future. Before quarantine, my rides, I did just a few around Colorado and you can't go wrong because it's just gorgeous here. Just go west and everything's perfect. So yeah, I just love it. Anywhere in Colorado is my favorite place to ride. So.
Yeah, I completely agree. So I'm from Colorado, and I have ridden almost most of my riding career has been in Colorado, and I completely agree with Katelyn. It's super beautiful here, but I also know that everywhere that these women live and ride, there's phenomenal riding. So I have some questions for each of you that I'll be addressing individually, but for those who are watching at home on YouTube, feel free to submit any questions you have in your chat, and we will get to them towards the end. So if something sparks while you hear these ladies telling their stories, please put some questions in, and they would love to answer them for you. So Jenna, I'm going to start with you. You have done some really interesting things in the last couple of years, especially since you've been on the Revit team. And you have gotten to know some different companies and ride some different bikes, like the Hertz motorcycle rental, and you've done some riding with Triumph on different bikes. Would you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I was lucky enough after we were in BC, I flew to Vegas, and Hertz Ride has opened a new place there where you can rent some BMW motorcycles. So that was first time I really rode extensively on a BMW. They let me take one of their, I think it was the F750 GS. They let me take one of those out for a little bit before I flew home the next morning. And I had a really great solo ride. That was a fun little trip I got to do. And then back in February, right before all this happened, I was out in Arizona with Triumph, and I got to try the new Tiger 900, which, being a former Tiger 800 owner, I was really excited about that. That bike is phenomenal. It's so much better than the 800. I know everybody's saying that, but it really is. And I also got to ride some other bikes that are kind of outside of my comfort zone. Got to ride the Street Triple RS and the new Rocket 3. So that was really exciting for me, just getting on some different bikes, being in a beautiful place. I was in Erika's hometown, so that was pretty cool.
I was jealous. I was here in New York.
Jenna, that's awesome. I was going to ask you about your switch, because you were riding a Triumph Tiger when I first met you, and now you're riding a KTM. So tell us a little bit about the differences between the two, and kind of what made you go that way.
Yeah, so I've been looking to upgrade my Tiger anyways. I'd planned to get another Tiger XCA. That was kind of before they announced the 900, what it was going to be. Because my Tiger that I had was a roadie model, so I was kind of riding it off-road a little harder than I probably should have been. But I mean, it can handle it, it can do it. But, you know, some other bikes do it a little bit easier. So once we went to Canada and we rode those 1090s, I just fell in love. It was so much easier to ride off-road. Honestly, that bike kind of feels like cheating in comparison. So it's big and tall and heavy, but once you get it moving, it's so light and nimble. It's just so much fun to ride. So I've been really happy with that so far. But I wouldn't be upset with a Tiger 900 either.
So I'm going to wind up asking all of you this, just because I know that for women who are watching, they're going to be curious. But tell us how tall you are.
I am 5'8". I have a 31-inch inseam. So my bike has a 35-inch seat height. Both of my bikes do, because I have a dual sport too.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jenna. Katelyn,
Yeah.
you have done some really extensive traveling. You like to get on your bike and go off and ride for long periods of time and do some camping and that sort of thing. And my understanding is you've done a trip in Africa. Will you tell us a little bit about your travels and traveling in Africa?
Yeah, I could probably talk about this for hours, but yeah, my husband and I together, a little over a year ago, we got back. We started in South Africa and rode all the way up the eastern side for the most part of Africa and ended in Egypt and came home. Probably the most amazing experience of my life. So I could go into tons of detail, but it was incredibly challenging, a huge learning experience, but so much fun. And I would do it over and over again. And I can't wait for another, country tour. I don't know what that's going to be at this point, but it was a pretty amazing experience. So otherwise, I just done a lot in the Western US, like you were saying, Louise, too. I love riding New Mexico. Utah is some of my favorite. And then I did ride up to Canada, to British Columbia, to meet all these wonderful ladies back in September. So that was a good one too.
That's awesome. Going back to when you were riding in Africa, especially since you said you could talk about it forever, I'll just ask a little bit more. What was your most challenging moment while you were there? And then what was your most like exciting and rewarding moment? And I actually am really curious to see if they were the same.
Most challenging, we chose to do it was about a 200-mile section in Kenya called Siboloi. It's Siboloi National Forest. A lot of people know it if you've ridden in that area, but it was about 200 miles of the hardest riding I will ever do, probably, and it never stopped. And I crashed a lot. So,
what made it hard? Sand? Is that what you said? What made it hard?
Oh, tons of sand, tons of small rock, big rock, lava rock. I mean, ditches, whatever. Yeah, it was about 120 degrees out the whole time. So it was a unique experience. I really had to push myself, but getting through that and coming to the end where you hit pavement for the first time in 4 days, it was you want to get down on your knees and kiss the ground. But what we saw out there and experienced, I don't know, you can't really, can't really explain it, but.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So you said that there will probably be some other countries on your list. Do you have maybe a top few that you're sort of thinking about, other places you want to go and ride?
Yeah, I would love to go South America. That would be amazing. I did have plans to ride for about a month in Mexico this summer, so we'll see how the world opens up, if that still happens, but that's near future. And I'd go anywhere. Anywhere would be so fun to just explore and ride. So yeah.
Awesome. That's good stuff. Thanks so much, Katelyn. Yeah. Amelia, I'm going to move on to you next. Yeah. You are our Go Fast girl, and this is amazing me. So I want to hear a little bit about your riding prior to getting into doing racing and rallies, and sort of how you made that transition.
Yeah, so I got my license probably about 6 or so years before I ever tried dirt. And I didn't really ride that much on the road. It just didn't feel like a really good fit for me. And then started riding on GS 650 BMW, and went to some local events. And events really were the gateway to me. One, because they show you what you're able to ride and legally in the area. They give you groups to ride with. They introduce you to really awesome people who know what they're talking about and who can recommend setups for your bikes and setups for your gear. So there's one that's super local, Conserve the Ride and Alt Rider, which I've been to a lot. There's a couple other Dirty Dabbers, stuff that's local that I tried. And as I sort of got into that and I was going to all of these events with all of my gear, the tent on the back of my motorcycle, I sort of realized that, if I crashed in the woods, I couldn't get home. So at that point, I got a Husaberg 390. And my ex-husband and I started trailering to these events so that if I crashed, I could always load up and drive home. And from there, it sort of got smaller and smaller. The trails got narrower and narrower until I sort of started racing and set up a team of 5 other women who joined me for the last 2 years at a 24-hour race in the Northeast, which is a lot of fun.
Have you done that race more than once?
Yeah, actually, we've done it 3 years in a row now, and this will be the 4th year.
And is it the same team every year, or have people come and gone?
People come and go. The first year I was on a team with a bunch of other men, and I did 1 lap. I did it slower than I could have walked that distance. It was 13 miles. And then, you know, that lit the fire in me. And I said, next year I'm coming back with a team of all women. And so the people swap in and out every year, but it's a group of great women.
That's awesome. Oh, and I totally forgot to ask this of Katelyn, but I'll ask you first. How tall are you?
I am 5'7". I have stumpy little legs, though. I'm a 29-inch inseam.
Awesome. Katelyn, I'll ask you really quickly. How tall are you?
I'm tiny. I'm 5'2". I don't know my inseam, but I'm pretty short, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Kris. All right. You live in this really great world of encouraging and opening up the sport to more and more women, and you do a lot of work with women ADV riders. Tell us what made you decide to get into, you know, really encouraging women and working with other women and going to rallies.
You bet. Actually, it's kind of funny. I remember before women ADV riders was a thing, I saw a post on a chat board somewhere that said, does anybody want to write about, do any women want to write for a magazine about working on their bikes? And I jokingly wrote back like, oh, I could write about all the mistakes I've made, because before I started working on motorcycles, I didn't know anything about, like, I thought a car was a thing and you take it to the shop and they do something magic and it comes back working. Like that was my, and you know, they wrote back and they were like, we'll take anything you're willing to write. And I'm like, okay, that's weird, but okay. And I fell in love with the idea of, like, first of all, getting to write about riding because I'm passionate about riding. So getting to talk about it, and then having women reach out and go like, oh, like you can do that, or I didn't ever think of myself as somebody who could work on my bike, or maybe I want to try riding a motorcycle or a bigger bike. And from there, I got to help out at Pat Jake's ADV Women Rally. And that one is a women-centric rally. There are guys there too, but it's really geared towards inspiring women really to be the best person they can be. And she does that through the vehicle of ADV riding. And I love her mission, and I love how she teaches and her passion. And we were lucky enough 2 years ago to move into a house that has 1.5 acres of land, and most of it's just a big empty lumpy field. So I get to do a lot of training there where I love teaching beginners, because I had a lot of fear when I was starting out, and if I can help anybody sort of work through the fear, like the technique I think is important, and I think that's what helps you kind of get through the fear is technique and practice. But I love like working with anxiety and helping people figure out what's scary to them and breaking down the skills into little pieces. So it's been super rewarding.
That is awesome. And that was the first place that I met you, was at one of those rallies. And I think we've just had a whole lot of fun since then. Speaking of fun, and speaking of your lumpy backyard, could you really briefly and quickly touch on what your latest BDR is? And if for anyone who might be watching who doesn't know what a BDR is, BDR stands for Backcountry Discovery Route. So there are routes through, is it 9 states now?
Or up to 10 now.
Yeah, and so they follow off-road routes as much as they can, and there are parts of the routes that are difficult and parts that are easier, and they're just the most beautiful way to be able to ride a motorcycle, mostly off-road. But because states are closed down right now, Kris has a really great story about her most recent BDR.
That is true. My most recent ride was not technically the one before quarantine because we actually created the backyard discovery route a couple of weeks ago on my husband's YouTube channel, For the Love of Knobs, and had so much fun like trying to visualize our backyard as a BDR. And it was a riot. And I literally found a spot that I had never ridden in my backyard.
That's perfect. You hit new terrain even during quarantine. I love it. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Kris.
Yeah.
How tall are you?
I am 5'2" with a 27-inch inseam.
All right. Okay.
I lower my bikes.
Kris on the shorter side, and we have Jenna and Amelia on the taller side, and we have one lady left to talk to, Erika. So let's start out. How tall are you?
5'4".
5'4", awesome. All right, so you're like right in the middle of all of the women. All right, so you have done some really pretty great destination travel. You've traveled in Mexico, you've traveled in Colombia, sort of the Americas, and you've traveled both on your own bike and on rental bikes. We would love to hear about your travels and how they differed in the different countries and the bikes.
Yeah. So I would say having your own bike is probably always, in my opinion, ideal. But sometimes you want to get to a place that it's not so easy to just ship your bike, and you want to get to a place and experience that place in a short amount of time. And we've explored a couple of options. My husband and I really wanted to get to South America this past year, and we really wanted to go and experience Colombia. So we looked into renting bikes and came across Epico Motos, and Ricardo is an amazing tour guide. I have to absolutely recommend his company and his adventures. But we got to go explore Colombia together, just the three of us, and we went on some amazing backcountry routes, mostly dirt, small cities, towns, waterfalls, volcanoes, thermals. It was really amazing, but definitely more comfortable, always on my own bike. But you know, BMW Motorcycle Girl has ridden just about everything but BMWs lately. So keeping with the theme, you know, always happy to ride whatever is available, and feeling very grateful to have had the opportunity to ride with all of these wonderful ladies. So
that's awesome. So speaking of BMWs, what did you ride at the Cycle World rally a couple years ago?
Was that the KTM rally?
No,
The one before.
That was the one before, yeah.
Cycle World. What did I ride?
The enormous BMW.
Oh, ride the Sierras. Oh yeah, I rode the 1200. Oh my gosh, I have to say that bike is really well weighted and very, very even keeled, and it was a monster. But there was a couple of dirt naps that occurred, and got to stand on top of the bike. But I actually really liked it, and have actually ridden it since. But it's a heavy bike, it's a beast. So I felt like it was a challenge at hand, but enjoyed it nonetheless. So yeah.
That's really awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right, I have a couple more questions for each of you. And Erika, I'm going to keep with you. You started riding, I think because you rode with your family. Is that right?
Yeah. So when I was little, about 8, my dad put us on quads, and really most of my early experience was on quads and some dirt bikes. I didn't really get back to dirt bikes, or excuse me, motorcycles, street legal motorcycles, until after college. So I guess the last 10 years have been mostly on road. And then it wasn't until I met everybody on this team that I got really challenged to go back to off-road. And Amelia definitely encouraged me on that with the over and out, and putting me on a little 200 DR, and romping around the woods and on the East Coast definitely inspired my dirt attitude. But you know, growing up with motorcycles was something that was really important in our family, and we've been able to travel together on motorcycles. So my mom rides behind my dad, and we've done some pretty epic trips from Tucson all the way to Guatemala through Mexico and back. And that was an opportunity that I had to ride on my own bike. So it was, you know, much more of a, I'm comfortable in this bike setting, and, you know, we carried everything that we needed. And I think somebody asked earlier, what was the most important thing to make sure you had on hand, was something that my dad always talks about: zip ties and duct tape. So those are 2 important things that you can't forget to pack at any given time. Perfect. So, but yeah, sharing those adventures with your family is some of the most powerful and special moments that I've ever had.
Yeah, that is super special. That's awesome. Thanks, Erika.
Yeah.
Jenna, so I have a question for you, and maybe you'll remember back to the KTM rally almost 2 years ago now. You had a pretty special moment at that rally. Would you care to share that with us?
Oh, you would bring that up, wouldn't you? So for that rally, for anyone that doesn't know, we were on the Gnarly Routes bikes, which are some rental bikes from a couple of KTM pros that they put on some gnarly routes and take people out. So we borrowed their bikes that weekend. and I was on a 350 EXCF, and I was following Amelia up this rocky trail. We went up at once, no problems. We had a great time. We came back down and we're like, let's do that again. So of course, you know, I got cocky, and I was following behind her, and she hit this rock, got a little air. So I hit the rock, got a little air. And the next thing I know, when I came down, my front wheel had turned just a little bit. So I go kind of up the hillside and ended up with the bike upside down in a tree with me just kind of sitting on my butt. It looked pretty gnarly. It was really funny. It's hilarious. The picture's been all over Instagram and stuff. But yeah, so I put a KTM upside down in a tree.
And I have to say, there are a few of us who witnessed this, Amelia and Erika and I, and it was pretty funny for sure. And that bike totally came out of that situation in really great shape. It was sort of amazing. You managed to get it like upside down in between these two trees, and it just sort of perched there. It was really well done.
I'll have to share that picture on my Instagram story again later for anybody that's missed it. So.
Awesome. So Amelia, you've definitely, as we have just heard, have been some inspiration for each of these women. And it sounds like you have a lot of women that come and go with your racing team. What is it like being a female racer in the world of off-road racing?
You say inspiration. Sometimes I feel like the instigator. I feel like I've led a lot of people to crash. It's interesting. There's a certain level of camaraderie of people who ride little bikes with you and who go to these races. And one of my best friends rides with me and is definitely faster than me. But there's challenges that you face as a woman that I think men don't get. And so when you meet another woman, and like Kris was saying, dealing with that anxiety that I think a lot of men don't get, or if they get it, they don't talk about it. But women have this thing off-road, and I get this a lot of, oh, I don't know if I can do that. And, oh, this is scary. And, oh, I don't think I'm going to be able to make it up that. And I think the biggest win that I've had every single time I ride off-road is tackling that scary thing and being able to accomplish it. And even if it means I have to pick my bike up 5 times getting up the hill, it's getting up the hill in the end. And I think watching other women take on things like the 24-hour race, where you race for 24 hours in the middle of the night, and take on challenging things like riding at night while you're getting passed by pros going way faster than you. And that sense of accomplishment you get at the end, you can see people's confidence getting better. It's fantastic.
Awesome. Thank you. Katelyn, I heard from somebody, man, that girl is tough as nails. My understanding is that you've been around on a bike with broken bones before. Is that true?
Yeah. Recently with all these ladies, I may have, I broke my foot.
And did you continue to
everything was fine. It was great. I wouldn't have wanted it any other way. You know, you get to like come back to work with your giant boot on, and everyone's like, oh, what'd you do? You know, slip in the parking lot? No, actually, I was riding my motorcycle, so take that. But yeah, I did.
A good story to go with that. And I think you've actually just inspired other people who come back to work with broken bones to be like, no, I was totally riding my motorcycle. That's awesome. So Kris, I'm gonna ask you just a little bit about what it's like riding with your spouse and spending days and nights riding and camping together.
I love it, although it does come with its own set of communication challenges. I feel like one of the things I really love is that when we get to like those incredible, beautiful places that you only can see off-road because there's nobody around and it's rural, and you get to turn around and be like, oh, we're here together. Like, you take those moments with you, those moments that aren't captured by a camera and that you can't share with anybody verbally, but you've both been there, and you can look at each other later and say, remember that time when we were at Titus Canyon and looking over the cliff and the beautiful green and the colors and the red. And but he's also the person who taught me to ride. The poor guy with all of my anxiety.
By your spouse.
And it's funny because we both joke, and I think we're both serious when we say we might not want it any other way, because we learned a whole new level of communication and about like, oh, like I need what I call a feedback sandwich. Like, you did this thing right, you could probably work on this thing, and good job on this. And if you tell me this that way, I will hear the piece in the middle. But if you just tell me of the 13 things I did wrong, I'll just be a puddle of tears.
That's awesome. That's really, I think that's really super special that you guys have been able to do that and accomplish the BDRs together and do all of that. So thank you for sharing that. So ladies, we've had some questions that have come in from people who are watching this. So I'm going to start with this one that came in from Sean Thomas. What is the most important item that in the middle of the trip you realized you needed but never considered or originally figured was not important? And I'm going to preface this by saying my packing method for a trip, especially when I do a long one, is to throw a whole bunch of stuff onto the bed in the guest room. And then over the next couple of weeks, I go in and I add more things and I take away and I add and I take away. And I really always hope that like one of those things that I took away was never something that I was going to need. Have any of you ever wound up in on a ride and needed something that you thought maybe you hadn't originally, or you're like, man, I wish I had that?
I'm going to jump in here because I don't have the long trip experience that some of these ladies do. But one thing I pack on every single ride, and a lot of you have seen this, is I will pack in my handlebar bag some kind of sugary candy that I can share, like a bag of Skittles. And I have revived men who are practically dying on the side of the trail with a little handful of Skittles to just take a second and just take a break when you're struggling over that hard terrain to just like revive yourself. And if it's a Skittle or an M&M or just a little bit of a break, it really seems to help.
Awesome. I think there are a bunch of us who have been the happy recipients of Skittles for you on the trail.
A share size bag.
Yeah, exactly. It's perfect. How about you, Jenna? Anything you've ever wished that you had that you found in the middle of something you're like, man, I wish I had that?
You know, I usually make a huge list before my trips, and I go down and I check everything off and I'll revise it and stuff. So the only time that I have found that I forgot something that I needed, I usually am really good about this. So all my trips where I just packed the bike and just went on the bike, I've never really found that I forgot anything that I needed. However, a couple of years ago, we bought a trailer, an enclosed trailer, and we decided to trailer the bikes out because we had really aggressive knobbies on and stuff. So then we got out there and I realized I forgot all kinds of things. And one of the main ones was the chain cleaner and chain lube and stuff, which normally on the bike, I would always have that with me. And then I'm like, okay, so we trailer out and I forget everything. I can pack a bike, I can't pack a trailer. So, but I've been fairly lucky up to this point.
That's pretty good. That's pretty awesome. All right. Anyone else? Katelyn or Kris? Erika?
Not so much forgetting. For me, it's like trying to remember where I packed everything. And I think with multiple experiences, it's gotten better. But yeah, once I packed the chain lube that we brought underneath the tool roll, and it was a squishy bottle, it squeezed out all the chain lube. So that wasn't terribly effective.
Yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily that I would say that my packing has gotten more and more condensed over the years of traveling on a bike, and you kind of just like learn to realize that you don't need a lot. And so I guess more so than forgetting things, it's more of what can I now take out for the next trip, or thinking about that trip and thinking, wow, I really didn't need 4 t-shirts, I only needed 2 kind of thing. And so like continuing to kind of minimize and kind of really make your packing very concise and very, very light, especially if you're kind of packing and unpacking every day.
That's cool. So on the subject of packing for trips, do you, Erika, have an ultimate trip that you want to do? Like a bucket list trip or whatever.
Yeah, and Louise, I mean, you definitely have inspired a lot of that. Thank you for sharing your year-long journey. I mean, I would love to, start from the top and work our way all the way down to the tip of South America. But for me, being able to do it in stages, and part of that first stage was really Colombia, and I think we've got our sights set on something else in South America. This probably in 2021, but Peru is right up there, Argentina. So those are definitely on the list to get to, and I'll be calling you, Louise, to get some special routes for sure.
Absolutely, please do. There's so much to see, and I love being able to share that with people because it's so great. There's so many wonderful people out there to meet. Katelyn, so you talked about some of your things. Is there one ultimate trip that if you were like to do only one more big trip, what would it be? What would you see?
Quit my job and just ride around the world. But I do, Mongolia is super high on my list. Also have a really weird desire to just putt around on a small bike in like Vietnam, Cambodia, I think would be really cool. And then of course, Alaska down to South America like you did would be absolutely amazing. But yeah, all of those I've been thinking about, so.
Awesome. Kris, how about you on an ultimate trip?
I think I have like a small scale and a big scale. Like I would love to fly to Vietnam and like buy a motorcycle and ride all over Vietnam and just sell it when we're done and fly home. But I love the idea of riding Africa. I feel like the major cultural difference would just be amazing to go experience and immerse myself in.
Yeah, that's awesome. I guess you'll be calling Katelyn too.
Yeah.
That's very cool. So Amelia, I know that you focus a lot on doing races and rallies. I know that you've also ridden sort of all over, and I know I've seen video of you out at Moab. If you had one ultimate ride that you wanted to do, what would it be?
So my dream ride has always been Scotland, the North Coast 500. I lived in Scotland for a couple years. I had that planned for the first week in July this year. I don't know if it's gonna happen, but I'll get there eventually.
All right, well, we will either keep our fingers crossed for you for this July or for whenever you plan it after that. So awesome. And Jenna, how about you? What's your ultimate dream ride?
I have a bunch of them, but one that always comes to mind that I always think of is I really want to go to Iceland and kind of tour Iceland on a bike on a dual sport. So that's big on my list, and I have tons more, but that's the one I'll go with.
Yeah, Iceland's totally on my list too. I get that. That's awesome.
You need to go with me when I go.
Yeah, let's go. On the subject of that, Conway 34 has asked a question of you guys. So curious to know what you girls do for day jobs, and is taking off time for doing trips and rallies, that sort of thing, difficult? How do you manage it?
I know I work a boring day job myself, so I get like 4 or 5 weeks vacation each year, and I use them for trips. So
cool, that's awesome. Erika, how about you?
Yeah, I work in marketing, so I definitely have a day job, but try to take off time when available, and that's how we plan our trips, is in small chunks.
That's really cool. All right, Katelyn, what do you do?
When we did our big trip to Africa, I quit my job. We'd been saving up money for a while. We knew that was a big dream of ours, so that was kind of a big life change for a minute there. But now I have a normal day job, and just the same, any vacation I can get is, let's take a trip. So
awesome. Okay, so for those of you who travel alone, Owen Hickman has asked, do any of you have worries about traveling alone? How do you deal with that if you do travel solo, and how do you combat fears? Katelyn, do you travel solo?
I haven't been out of the country solo, but I've ridden a lot in the US solo, and yeah, it can be scary, but to be honest, most of the people I run into are just so immediately like want to embrace me and want to know what I'm doing, or they see me drop my bike and I have like 30 people over to help me immediately, you know? So it's really kind of a great way to meet people if you can let go of that fear and just go out and do it, you know? So.
Awesome. Who else has traveled alone? Raise a hand, ladies.
Like you, I've just done local stuff alone, and I don't think I've ever thought about it. I just treat it like I would get in a car. I just get on my bike and go.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think one of the things that a lot of us are pretty lucky to have is a good sense of self. So when we think about going out and traveling alone, we go out and we meet people. That's definitely what I have found in riding with all of you. And when you're open, just like Katelyn was saying, when you're open to other people, good things kind of come to you. So I have a couple of questions. I think this has come from a number of people. For our shorter riders, what advice would you give to shorter girls for riding taller ADV and dirt bikes? And Kris, let's start with you, because you've got a pretty tall bike.
Yes. Yeah, it's like climbing a mountain every time I get on. But I think taking lessons, building confidence, and starting on a smaller bike is probably the way to go. And learning to stop with one foot down. Start with 1 foot down. But after a while, you just get the balance and you get the feel, and you can stop with a toe down and chill. And you do get used to it. That's the advice, is like take lessons and work your way up.
Yeah. Awesome. Erika, I have seen you ride a really tall KTM 2-stroke bike. How did that feel, and how did you start to feel comfortable on it?
Yeah, so I had some good pointers from some of my fellow teammates on how to get my leg up and over and lean off to the side and start rolling before you're actually sitting up on the bike. That was really helpful. And I mean, I guess trial by error. I mean, you just got to try it. And I've definitely spent a lot of time on the side where you didn't work out, but you know, I had fantastic teammates to help me pick up the bike a number of times. So that's just got to give it a try.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Katelyn, you've been on GS's, like a 650 GS is actually, it's fairly tall. I can remember I started out on a 650 GS and I lowered mine when I first had it because it felt too tall for me, but you are another 2 inches shorter than me. So how have you dealt with the tall bike thing?
I did the same thing when I first started riding. I actually did lower my bike until I got comfortable at that point. And now it's back at stock height. I do have a custom lowered seat on it. And people always wonder how I can sit on that seat for like hundreds of miles at a time because there's like no foam left. But yeah, I mean, just never, make sure you never stop where the street is like off kilter because you're going down. That's all I can say. So I don't know. I haven't gotten brave like these other girls to get on the bigger bikes where I have to like stop with 1 foot off to the side. But I know it just takes practice and getting comfortable with it and riding on the grass and learning that it's okay to fall down, really.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think people, especially shorter riders, whether they're women or men, get pretty good at the eject. So yeah. I assume that at some point each of the ladies has been good at the eject off the bike as it's deciding to take a nap. So this is my own personal question that I wanted to ask you guys, and I know that there are a number of people out there who always want to know about this. Amelia, I'll start with you. How do you deal with your hair in a helmet and then helmet hair afterwards?
It's gonna get sweaty and it's gonna get gross. You gotta braid it. If you can braid it, braid it. There's no way around it. I haven't found one, at least. I mean, you see the pictures of me, and if I've pulled my helmet off, it's like just sweat all over the place.
Yeah, you ride pretty hard, so I imagine keeping it under control in the braid is probably a pretty good idea for you.
Yeah, there's no pretty option for me.
Jenna, what do you do with your hair in a helmet?
It's just terrible. I just pull it back and then it gets knotted up. It's terrible. I really need to figure out how to do something better with that. I know Amelia once braided my hair on a trail for me. Over at the KTM rally, she's like, come here, I'm gonna braid your hair. Other than that, I just wing it. It turns out terrible. I look like a drowned rat when we get to where we're going because I'm all sweaty and dirty and gross. And I don't care. It's fun, and I really don't care what I look like afterwards. So
that's awesome. Okay, so for people who rode street, let's see, Erika, because you talked about you went from street to going back to riding on the dirt again. Do you have any advice for transitioning from street riding to dirt riding?
Yeah, I mean, something that probably I could have done a little bit better job in the beginning when I was going back to dirt was maybe start back on a bike that was a little smaller and more comfortable. I think I kind of went big when I got back onto the dirt. But I think finding something that fits your size, your ability, so that you're comfortable when you are starting something new would be really helpful. Finding a place that's not too challenging, something that you can start out on, some, back forest roads, something that's safe, that doesn't have a lot of traffic, something like that. And definitely with somebody that can help you in case you, drop the bike and can show you some pointers or something like that. Go with a group. I think all of us are a testament to being able to connect through some sort of group through Facebook or, somebody that definitely connect with other riders, whether it's male or female. There are a lot of riding groups out there, and I think a lot of people are willing to help new riders and get people into the sport. This is definitely a growing sport, especially with a women's segment. And I think that there's a lot of energy and effort being put around kind of helping empower us as women riders to get out there and just give it a try. And it really doesn't matter what you ride or how well you ride it. I mean, I think it's just about getting out there and having fun, and whatever that fun is that means to you is the most important. So if you don't like riding dirt, or if you don't like riding street, I mean, it's really a personal preference, and it's really about, just getting out there and having fun for what's fun for you.
That's awesome.
I'm gonna piggyback on that, Louise.
Yeah.
Like Erika sort of mentioned, there's a ton of trainings, and I know Erika's taken a training. I've taken many trainings. Definitely sign up for a training. It is way easier to be told how to ride dirt by somebody who is not your significant other. I think Kris is very lucky. But what I found and I've seen with friends is when your significant other is trying to teach you how to ride dirt, they're trying to teach you, and also they're very busy worrying about you. And so their stress level is very high. Whereas it's better if the person's like a pro and who knows how to teach you and who knows how to communicate these little things along the way.
That's awesome. And that was this question actually came in from someone who is watching. Her name is Kristen Whitaker, and that's our last question for the night. Kris, do you have anything else that you would like to add? Because I know that you really have come in to the instruction side of things now. If you have anything to add, even about your spouse teaching you or not, please add it here.
I mean, I think I just want a second. Like, if you're transitioning from street to dirt, it's definitely helpful to get some lessons, because all of the body postures tend to be opposite, like standing versus sitting, or leaning the bike one way versus the other. And learning those skills from the start, as opposed to like figuring it out later, just leads to success.
Awesome. Do you have any one piece of advice to offer a new or aspiring rider?
Just do it.
Yeah. Awesome. That's actually a great piece of advice.
We're all here cheering everybody on. We're all here to cheer you on.
Yes.
Erika, what is your one piece of advice for a new or aspiring rider?
Yeah, no, exactly that. Just ride. Just get out there and try it, and ask questions.
Awesome. Jenna, what would you tell someone who is new to this?
Yeah, I think I would be the same thing. If you can take a class, take a class. And I agree with, for the most part, having someone that's not your significant other to teach you. I was lucky with that. Mine was really great. I took to it pretty easily, so he didn't have to do a whole lot of training. And then we've kind of learned to ride dirt together, so that's been a good thing. But yeah, I think having somebody that is patient with you to teach you will go a long way, because you know you're gonna fall, you're gonna have issues and stuff learning to ride dirt, but it should be fun and it should be done in a safe environment. So
cool. Katelyn, what's your one piece of advice to offer to new riders?
I agree with the others. You just got to get out there and do it, and you know, don't get frustrated with yourself, because it can be. Have fun, and yeah, look for Facebook groups like Erika was saying, and other people to ride with, because yeah, it's good to have this. That other women are like such a great like confidence builder, because they're there cheering you on. So it's good to start with that.
Awesome, thanks. And Amelia, do you have one piece of advice maybe to offer to new racers?
I think that saying everybody rides their own race. So really just encouraging everybody to ride at their own pace, tackle the difficulty level that you're comfortable with. You'll build the skills as you go along, and don't feel pushed at all, because that ratchets stress levels up. So just go out there and have fun and do what you're comfortable with and play around with it.
That is awesome. I think listening to all of you guys, it sounds like what you really want to do is just get people excited to get out there, take your time, have fun. I want to thank all of you so much for coming out and talking to us and talking to the people who are out there and watching and sending in questions. Tracy, I'm going to hand it back to you now.
Thank you, Louise. And before we totally sign off here, I wanted to just pop in a quick visual of a story that Jenna was telling. If we could cue that up. This is Jenna living the lifestyle. This is what it's like to go hard road. Jenna, we love this picture. It's absolutely one of our favorites. Thank you for sharing that.
It is. I love it.
I just wanted to end this evening by saying a huge thank you to our amazing moderator, Louise, and to all the rest of our women's team. You've all been such an inspiration to women in this country and around the world, and we're so proud of each of you and so happy to be able to really spotlight each of your stories. For those of you watching at home, we've pasted each of these ladies' Instagram handles into the comments, into the description of the video here. So feel free to click through and give each of them a follow their stories and the rest of their riding careers. We've also pasted in REV'IT_adventure, and that's where you can follow along on the best news and updates that we have in the adventure segment. And finally, for those of you who have asked, how can I get on the REV'IT women's team? In 2020, the team is currently frozen, but in 2021, we'll be opening applications back up again. So follow our Instagram channel, follow us on Facebook at REV'IT, and stay tuned for what's to come. Ladies, thank you so much. Thank you for everyone who tuned in tonight, and have a great evening.
Thank you, Tracy.
Bye. Bye, guys.